Reverse Reverend here, coming to you with this week's current chapter of One Piece 881 review titled A Wave Room. The different blocks of the chapter are discussed first, and then I review the most interesting, important, or relevant parts at the end of the review. So let's get started. It starts with Luffy asking the crew what's going on. Everyone is panicking about the tsunami coming down, and Sparrow tells Big Mom not to sink the ship or they're going to lose the imaginary cake. Obviously, he knows there's not a cake, but he needs her to chase them before Chiffon and Pudding make the cake. I can't remember if he knows they're making the cake. I think he does. I'm not 100% sure, so let me know if I'm wrong. He's basically trying to get her not to destroy the imaginary cake while putting in Chiffon or completing the real cake so they can give it to her and she doesn't destroy everything. The crew then starts following Jinbei's instructions, and he asks Nami about where the wind is coming from. She tells him. He then says they're going to sail into the green room. They turn the ship towards the wave. Everyone then panics. There's kind of a comedic moment. The wave then crashes down, and then next we see the ship inside the wave. Jinbei explains the green room is a temporary space inside the wave as the crest is falling, and he says that fishermen kids like to swim in that area or play around in that area. And Jinbei says since it's a fine ship and they have a fine navigator, with proper steering, the ship will be invincible. And he's holding on to like a rope to steer the sails. He steers the ship through the wave, and Nami says she's never seen such a fine helmsman, obviously making it officially unofficial until he actually joins that he'll be the helmsman of the crew. That's a pretty big point of this chapter. It's actually the main point of this chapter, I would argue. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in the discussion portion. Big Mom is still going crazy. Sparrow thinks they died and then tells Katakuri. Luffy yells out for the crew. Brule then laughs that they were about to jump through the mirrors and attack, but there's no longer a need. The Charlotte Longneck twins say the ship doesn't look like it's underwater. And then the mirror breaks, and we see Nami telling the crew to break all the other mirrors and that it's the captain's orders. The twins and Brule see all the mirrors breaking, and one of them says that they think it's the water pressure from the ship sinking. The crew then contacts Luffy through a mirror shard and tells him about how Jinbei helped them escape. They then tell Luffy they'll be at the island with Sanji in about 10 hours, so he should get to a mirror on Cacao Island by then. Katakuri then trips him with what looks like it may be his awakening, and then he starts kicking him and beating him pretty bad. Luffy keeps quiet to avoid letting the crew know he's in trouble, and he's continually hit by Katakuri's attacks. He keeps the mirror hid in his mouth to prevent them from seeing what's going on, and he keeps quiet. He then spits out the shards that are remaining because it broke while it was in his mouth and he was getting beaten. And he has this weird smile and lies to the crew and says that he's okay. Everyone but Jinbei is relieved. And it's kind of obvious, like Jinbei said last chapter, that Luffy was putting his life on the line to fight somebody with a billion bounty. So he knows it's not going to be easy for Luffy. He's obviously not nearly as confident. He's probably seen more of what Katakuri can do since he's been part of Big Mom's crew as well. We then end the chapter with Katakuri predicting that Luffy will say, "I'm not dying here." Luffy then says it, and Katakuri pulls out his trident. Luffy is glaring at him. Chapter ends. No chapter next week. So the main discussion points are Jinbei's role and place in the crew. It's now confirmed that he's going to be the helmsman, like that'll be his official title when he actually joins. The thing that confused me is I thought it was official once he told Big Mom that he was leaving. I thought it was as soon as he left her crew, he's now in Luffy's crew. I thought, wait, no, he's definitely official. But then you see all the color spreads and stuff. They have all the other members of the crew, and Jinbei is not part of that yet. I mean, it could just be because they're waiting before he gets to Wano with everybody, and the whole new crew is together at once. But I think it's because he's technically not official. But this does let us know, which was already obvious, that he's going to be the helmsman of the crew. We see with Jinbei that he's a great helmsman and it fits him perfectly. I didn't want Jinbei to join the crew originally, but now after seeing this and having him grow on me, I'm glad he's joining. And I think the position of helmsman fits for him, and Frankie is a shipwright, which is a separate position. And speaking of Frankie, he was a member of the crew who I originally did not want to join. I wasn't really big on him until, again, he grew on me and he helped save Robin. So I'm glad to see Jinbei joining. I'm glad that he's a helmsman. I think it fits. And he's not just being thrown in there because he was a powerful Shichibukai, or he would just kind of be like an older guy who's in the crew, but he doesn't really have a position. The next part of the chapter I wanted to discuss is where Nami says to break all the mirrors and that it's the captain's orders. And this is something that's been kind of ongoing throughout this arc and really throughout the New World, more so lately, where they've been referring to Luffy as the captain. Of course, everybody, especially Zoro, before the time skip, saw him as their captain and as their leader. But I think it just shows the seriousness of the New World and of what they're trying to do that they call Luffy the captain. I really like that. It shows growth for the crew. It shows growth of respect for Luffy. I mean, they already respected Luffy, but it just shows growth for the crew's maturity, that the crew gets this and that it's not like it was back for the first half of the Grand Line, that they have to be serious and they have to completely rely on Luffy, which is why I think I'll come back to it in a minute about why I think Sanji's going to have another important role with Katakuri at the end of this arc. Next portion is the time limit of 10 hours. We do know that it took Luffy 11 hours to beat Cracker, and that was only because he had Nami's help. We know Katakuri is a lot stronger than Cracker, and so it's going to be interesting how Luffy can not only beat Katakuri, but beat him in less time. How Luffy can be so beaten up and then turn the tables on Katakuri. Again, I don't know what he can do that Katakuri can't except for Conqueror's Haki. Originally thought that would be the way he defeats him, and I think something like that will appear. There's a part where, if you go back, Rayleigh said there's more he can teach Luffy after Luffy mentioned his Gear 4th is not strong enough. Obviously, Rayleigh's not going to know much about Gear 4 in terms of the Gomu Gomu no Mi, so I'm thinking it's a Conqueror's Haki based thing that we're going to see at some point in this fight. I do think that Sanji will play an important role towards the end, and I'll get to that in a minute. Then we see Katakuri. It looks like his awakening, like this white mochi. It's obviously Katakuri, but and it's coming out of the ground, and his leg or his hand's not attached to it. So it seems like it's his awakening. And my question is, does that necessarily mean that Luffy's would be that way where he can turn everything rubber? The reason I don't think that would be the case is because Doflamingo and Katakuri can both produce their element without awakening. So, like, Katakuri can produce more mochi, Doflamingo can produce more strings. Luffy can't make more rubber. He's like Mr. One, he's made of his ability. So he's made of rubber, Mr. One's made of blade or whatever. And then the other one would be, I think Magellan's final form that actually can poison inanimate objects is his awakening. He also can produce his substance. So even though he can produce his substance, it didn't look like he could have the poison come out of nowhere. So I don't think Luffy's will necessarily be the same as Katakuri's or Doflamingo's, where he can affect everything around him in that way. Next portion is Luffy lying to the crew to let him know that he's okay, even though he's really beaten up. We see that Jinbei realizes, obviously, that Katakuri's a lot stronger than this. He mentioned before about Katakuri having a billion bounty and Luffy putting his life on the line. This is, again, Luffy taking charge as captain. His crew has a job to do, and they can't be distracted with worrying about if he's going to live or not. So he puts on a face and then is going to face off with Katakuri. So the outcome of the fight, again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think Conqueror's Haki is going to come into play. It's going to be something that he can do that Katakuri can't and will allow him to fight Katakuri in a different way. The other thing that comes into it is, like I said, the crew's seeing him more as the captain. And Sanji beat up his captain. And I still don't think he's been redeemed for that. Luffy had that one punch. And I don't think he's been redeemed for that. I think he's going to come in and help save Luffy after he cooks the cake. I think his ability as a chef is going to help him deal with the mochi devil fruit. He's going to fight and finish an injured Katakuri to save his captain, which then gives Sanji a feat of beating somebody who's really strong, then also helps redeem him by saving his captain after he beat the crap out of him earlier this arc. Originally, I thought it was going to be Luffy conquers Haki, beats Katakuri. Now I think it's going to be Luffy beats up Katakuri, but Sanji comes in and saves him in the end. I just don't see a Gear 4th form doing it. I don't see Awakening coming yet. I think that's going to come in Wano. I don't see a Gear 5, because I think that might be tied in with Awakening. No Gear 5, no Awakening. I think it'll be Conqueror's Haki. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling here, but like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what I can do better. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you think about my theory about Katakuri and Sanji, or Luffy and Katakuri, how you think that's going to end. I'll talk to you guys later.